அருகில் உள்ள ஆசிரியர்களுக்கும் நண்பர்களுக்கும் வணக்கம். இங்கு வருகை தந்திருக்கும் சிறப்பு விருந்தினரை கருதி என்று ஆங்கிலத்திலே பேசலாம் என்று நினைக்கிறேன். To the esteemed guests, the senior writers and friends present here, vanakkam. I consider it a great honor and a blessing to be receiving this award instituted in the name of a true stalwart of Tamil literature. I think it's very fitting that a translation award has been named after Muttulingam. As anyone who's read him here would know, he has the ability to write about any human experience in any part of this world with great authenticity. And I think he's one of the most global souls that Tamil literature has produced so far. But we owe him a debt of gratitude not only for his stories, but also the tireless effort that he puts into placing Tamil literature on a global stage. But as someone who also knows his zeal for translations, I take this award as a subtle order to keep working and keep translating. So I hear you, sir. My sincere thanks goes out to Velayutham Ayya and Dr. Sashithra Damodaran for instituting and sponsoring this award. Vijaya Vasakarmattam, of course, over the last almost a decade, I think, has been recognizing writers and also people in the trade. But this year is especially special because they've instituted 2 awards for translations, both into Tamil and out of Tamil. I take great pride in following after veteran translators M.A. Sushila and K. Nalathambi, who received the K.S. Subramaniam Translation Award in 2022. I recently read a Tamil Wiki entry on Saraswati Ramnath. She's an inspirational woman who translated between Hindi and Tamil. In fact, amongst other works, I think she translated Srila Shukla's Rag Darbari long before it came into English. And I saw that the editor of Dinamani Kadar was one of the people who was her early backers. So I see Mr. Vaidyanathan's presence here today as a continuation of that tradition. I miss meeting Anita Agnihotri when she came to the city a few years back for the Vishnupuram Awards. But I'm very glad to have had the opportunity to meet you again, ma'am. As someone who straddles corporate life and now literature, I take great inspiration from the work that you've put out alongside what must have been a very highly demanding job. When the organizers gave me the option of inviting one of the speakers today, the name that immediately came to my mind was Geeta Ramaswamy's. I had just finished reading her book, the memoir Lands, Guns, Caste, Woman, and I felt that her brand of idealism was very, very reminiscent of the protagonists in Stories of the Truth. If you haven't read the book yet, I would highly recommend that you pick a copy on the way out. Thank you so much for accepting my invite and being here. I must say that this setting actually feels a bit strange to me because it is usually Jayamohan who will be up here on stage and I down in the audience. But I guess that's the first time for everything. When I wrote to him way back in 2017, I think I really didn't imagine any of this. Till today I wonder how he got the confidence to give the rights to translate Aram to an absolute rookie. But I am very, very glad that he did because through translating this book, I think I have really found my creative purpose and perhaps avoided a midlife crisis as well. So thank you, Jay, for providing me a window to myself. Whenever I slacken, I take inspiration from Jay's tenacity of purpose. From the many pictures that we see of him sitting in the sidebirds of trains and typing away, of the stories we hear about how many keyboards he's burned through. And I really have no qualms in saying that to me, he's more than an author that I have translated. His words and both his works as well as his work ethic have really shaped my life in the last 10 years. He's undoubtedly a mentor. In the days up to this event, I was reflecting upon why this book has been received with so much love and excitement. Translations from Tamil to English, it's really not new. So I found myself asking why. And of course, I'd like to believe that my translation was great. I mean, which translator would not? But I think the real reason is the fact that Jaimohan has been translated into English for the first time and published for the first time in a significant way. When you think about it, I would say it's a shame really that it's taken this long. I think it's been almost 35 years since he wrote his first novel, and it's really unimaginable that it has taken us all this time to put him out in English. Second to that, I think, is the fact that I chose Aram. I was a few days back, I was at the book fair in Chennai, and to me it looked like it is still one of the best-selling short story collections in Tamil. It's really a collection that captured the imagination of the Tamil readers. And the response I've seen to this book, it underscores the fact that what we choose to translate is as important as how we choose to translate. And here I must acknowledge Juggernaut Books, my publisher. I think they've really done a fabulous job of launching both the author and the book in English. But I also want to say here that I was not commissioned to translate this work. I really just picked this book because I think way back in 2012 when I read Aram in Tamil, it left a very deep impression on me. And truth be told, it is what brought me back to Tamil literature after a long hiatus of reading only in English. And I would say that it's actually the book that made me a translator. So, if translating Jay was a challenge, I think publishing him in English was a challenge of a wholly different order, and one that I was much less prepared for. And here I must make a mention of my agent, literary agent Kanishka, without whom I don't think this book would have seen the light of day. In a recent gathering about the novel Maitri, the Malayalam poet P. Raman, he said something that really struck me as true of the larger literary atmosphere today that we see. And I quote, he says, "Reading in Kerala has become an exercise in investigating what a work is not. This work does not have a politics. It is not socially responsible. It is not feminist. It lacks a Dalit perspective and so on. It has become routine in Malayalam to find such flaws in order to reject a work. I suspect that this immaturity is now raising its head in Tamil too." Stop quotes. I think such labels, or even a lack of such labels, is being used as a reason to either accept or reject not only a work but an entire author. And I feel that this is extremely reductive. And as far as translations go, it's highly problematic because someone who's sitting very, very far away from the source language is making decisions on what should be published based on such labels, and effectively these are second-hand opinions that are being formed. So here I make an appeal for publishers to have a deeper and a more meaningful engagement with the real people who matter in the source language, which is the readers. But while I say this, I also realize that these are institutions that are working within the constraints of capitalism, and as someone who's been in private equity, I will not be flippant about it. Therefore, it falls on us who operate in the source language in Tamil in this case, to really advocate for ourselves. We cannot sit back and think that somebody else will come and recognize our works. And I would also say that there's a misplaced notion amongst us that the Anglophone world is not interested in reading translated literature. I don't think that's the case at all. Today there's a growing readership for translated literature across the country. And I feel we can really leverage our tradition of literary criticism to talk about what we believe is good literature. This is where I think also translators play a very important role as curators or literary initiators. It is with this dream that my friend and the fellow translator Suchitra and I have started an initiative called Muri. Through Muri, we wish to spotlight not only works that have already been translated, but also writers and works that we feel are worthy of translation. After the book came out, a lot of readers have reached out and talked about how moving the experience of reading this book was. But there's one conversation in particular that really stayed with me. This was a girl who called me all the way from Seattle. She said she was from UP and she had picked up the book on one of her trips here. I just wanted to share a few lines from her letter. She says, "This is one of the best works I have read in a very, very long time. Your stories are deep, visceral and heart-wrenching. I come from North India, and while I grew up in a relatively safer environment, my father faced the poverty of post-independence India. Even after working and earning for 35 years, his anxieties around food never went away. Even after 3 heart attacks, 2 angioplasties and 1 open heart surgery, he still craves a fried bread and rice pudding. I kept on thinking about my father while reading Meal Tally. Perhaps an email will be too short a space to describe how each of your stories have touched a different thread in my existence, and yet how your entire writing feels like a trunk I can rely on for bearing my own life." Stop quote. I felt that day I had the reward for my work. This is a letter that she wrote to J. Andrew. I feel like translation is next only to cricket in our country. Just as spectators, we have an opinion on how a captain must place his field. We think we know better than the batsman how to play that shot or how to bowl that ball or take that catch. It's the same with translations. Everybody has an opinion, right from the title to the words that we choose to use. Pretty much everyone has an opinion. I just wish that as translators we were as well paid as cricketers, but sadly I'm sure we'll never see that day. But the reason I say this is I think translation is more than the sum of these parts. The ultimate test of a translated work is, have I been able to make the reader feel the same experience that I felt while reading this book in the original language? And that's what makes it a creative pursuit. It's not simply transporting the words from language A to language B. And I must also acknowledge here the guidance that I got from my mentor Arunava Sinha, who I see as the Jayamohan of the translation world. He's translated around, I think, more than 80 books between Bengali and English. And through working with him in the South Asia Speaks mentorship program, I really understood what it means. What he means by translating, moving from translating content to translating intent. In a recent interview of, I recently read this interview of Gregory Rabassa, who is the famous translator of 100 Years of Solitude, Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. And he says that when his works came out, some of the early critics called it un-English. So when someone comes up to me today and says that the translation feels Tamil, that they can feel the Tamilness of the translation, I take it as a compliment. I don't think translation needs to be in the service of familiarity. For long, we have read works in English, we've read works in translation and understood cultures that are completely alien to us. And I think a good reader in another language will also understand our context. In fact, I think this newness that translation brings to the table is what pushes the boundaries of form and of language. It's why great writers like Pudmai Pittan and Bharati translated into Tamil. It's the antidote that we have today to the homogenization of literature. And I think we're already seeing this in India. We're seeing original writing in English becoming more inventive, and I would argue that it is partly because of translated literature. 4 out of 5 editions of the JCB Awards have been won by translated works. And of course there's the Bookawin of Tomb of Sand as well. But I think we still have a very long way to go in the dream of taking, Tamil literature to the global stage. In a recent study that we did for Mori, we found that in the last 10 years, only 15 Tamil translations have been published in the US. And if you talk about literary fiction, this would probably be even less. So we are talking about hardly 1 or 2 books a year. 2 books a year is, probably on the higher side. And I don't think this is going to change unless we come together as a language collective. We need a systematic, sustained, perhaps institutional effort to change this situation. And we can take inspiration from what's happened in Korean literature or Arabic literature here. We really need to groom translators. We need funding for translations to happen, and also organizations to build bridges between connoisseurs here and maybe editors outside the country. And awards like this, they can be a starting point for something, some such effort. On that note, I would like to thank Mr. Ravi Subramaniam and Austin Souther for all the effort that they've put into the event today. It will be remiss of me not to mention my friend and colleague Suchitra. She's been a real companion in what could have otherwise been a very lonely journey. And my husband, who's sitting here, Vijay, he's probably half a translator himself from all the reviews that I've made him do of my work. To my parents and my colleagues, thank you for being here and for cheerleading. In conclusion, I'd just like to say that the translator, I think, is the perfect imposter. She exists in 2 worlds without belonging to either and being a medium of exchange between the two. For the first time in my life, I'm glad to be an imposter. Thank you.